Good morning, our beautiful fun family. My name is Ariel Rivera, and I am your host of Fun Insurance Solutions. Today we have an amazing episode. Today it's a very special episode because you're going to get to meet the one and only Margo Giles. Margo is the CEO of InsurTech, and you're going to love her story. Not only that, you're going to learn a lot from her because Margo brings a different perspective to what insurance technology and InsurTech should be. So trust me, you're going to enjoy every second of it. Okay? Before we get there, I want you to listen to me. Insurance companies, MGAs, and wholesalers. This is super important. I want you to visit www.cyberinsurance.services, www.cyberinsurance.services to learn more about the cyber risk purchasing group we have for you. If you're currently not offering cyber liability insurance to your small business client or in your commercial portfolio, we have an admitted policy in all 50 states and Puerto Rico that we can offer you. You don't need to work with filing. There's not going to be any risk to your paper. You don't even have to work with claims. Trust me, you're going to love working with us. So again, visit www.cyberinsurance.services and let's go have some fun. Good morning, good afternoon, my dear friends and colleagues from the insurance industry. My name is Ariel Rivera, and I am your host of Fun Insurance Solutions. Today, I have an amazing episode. I am bringing you the one and only Margo Giles, the CEO from InsurTech, and I am so honored to have her, and I want to share her story, and I want Margo to tell us all about the new world of InsurTech. She's been around conferences. She has spoken, done keynotes at many of them. Anyways, it's going to be a beautiful afternoon. You're going to enjoy it. So welcome to the podcast, Margo.
Yes, thank you for having me so much. And I love your intro. I'm going to have that intro every time I step into a meeting, I think.
I'm happy to do it for you. Happy to, even
Yeah,
though
I appreciate that. Like I need that. You know, the music comes on and you come in and you do the intro. It'll be perfect.
I'll be more than happy to do that for you. But yeah, it's hey, listen, everything I said, everything is true. So that's the beauty of it. It's been amazing to watch your journey. We connect a lot over social media and I see and I follow everything you do, which makes me very proud. When I first reached out to you, which is the interesting part, I was running a series on Women Who Rock, right? And the reason I did that is I chose certain women from the insurance industry that I believe are actually rock stars that make a difference every day, day in and day out. So
I appreciate that. Yes. Lots of them and a lot more to come. I've seen a lot of growth. Leaders in insurance over the last probably even 2 years or so. So it's been awesome to watch.
I think the next 5 to 8 years are going to be huge in terms of the workspace and the workforce, how it's going to change and all that. So anyways, Margo, let's just say it's Friday. You had a beautiful week. You spoke at a conference. I don't mean to write. You spoke at a conference. Everything is running up. Your InsurTech is just running 100 miles per hour. Everything is perfect. You had a beautiful week. You want to go home, want to sit down, relax, and have something to drink. It can be water, juice, cocktail, anything. What is your drink of choice?
Oh, man. So for a while, it's been like a really good red wine. Like just like a good, when you put it in the nice glass, like a good one, and you sit down, you're like, oh, it's good. I do love a good glass of Cabernet. So I think I'm going to choose that one.
All righty. So I'll tell you something. I do love a good glass of Cabernet. So definitely when we're together, we're going to be sharing one of those. So thank you so much. All right. So we're going to do what I call in Spanish, open el baúl de los recuerdos, which means we're going to open the trunk of memory. It's kind of like a weird translation. But anyways, we're going to go down memory lane, and I want you to tell everyone and the thousands of listeners we have who is Margo Giles, who is InsurTech, and how did you become the CEO and the top insurance leader you are today?
Oh my goodness. So do you want to go we want to go all the way back?
You can go as back as you want.
Let's go back.
By the way, I got a question before you go as back as you want. Did you go to FSU? Are you a Knowles?
I did. Yeah.
Good for you. I have my daughter. So my daughter plays soccer. She's a huge soccer fan. She's only 10, so she's still little. And that's where I want her to go because
it's FSU, a wonderful school. They have a great insurance. I didn't go there for insurance because like nobody in insurance goes to school. But actually now they do. And there's a fantastic fantastic risk program at FSU for insurance.
Nice. Yes, which I think it
Yeah.
was started by the National Alliance years ago. So it's a great program. But anyway, sorry to cut you short.
No,
Tell
no,
us
go ahead.
all about you.
Oh my goodness. So I think first thing to know is for most of my life, I was an entrepreneur. And I say that like in general, as a young child, I used to I grew up in Tampa, Florida. So I'm a Florida girl at heart and I'm still here, but I grew up on this golf course, which was like the public golf course, and it was great. I loved growing up on a golf course. It was just like me and like 20 kids, that lived on our little cul-de-sac, and we just had the little bike gang. You remember that from the 90s, right?
Oh, that
Um,
was beautiful. By the way, did
it
you
was
play
the
golf?
best. I attempted to play. I'm terrible at golf. Although in my older age now I'm thinking maybe I'm going to pick it up again. It's just, something fun to do. Not serious, but as like as a
No,
fun
no,
hobby.
just for tournaments and
Yeah, for stuff like that. But
networking.
I grew up in that scenario, and also for whatever reason, once again, I was the only girl on the block. So it was a bunch of kids all my age, but they were all boys, and I was the only girl. Which seems to be a continuing theme in my career. But just living on the golf course, I remember being, 9 years old and going up to the 7-Eleven and buying a bunch of water onto the golf course and all the balls that had gone everywhere in the rough, and then kind of putting up my little lemonade stand with my friends, and we were selling the golf balls back to the golfers, and selling drinks and whatnot, like right there. We lived on I believe it's the ninth hole.
That is
um
awesome, by the way.
and
Such
that
a
was like our summer thing, and that's how we earned money to go. Oh my god, if anybody's from Tampa or from Florida, if Adventure Island or Busch Gardens, like 'cause that's here in Tampa, right? So like that was the thing. We would earn enough money so that we could go and get our passes so that during the summertime we could go to Adventure Island and Busch Gardens and run amok, I'm sure, as
that's
young
a fun
kids do.
time. By the way,
Yeah.
Are you a Disney woman
I
or not?
was. So I have two children myself. I have a 9-year-old and almost a 13-year-old. She'll kill me if I say she's 12. She's
I
almost
know.
13. Uh, so there was probably like a good 5-year span when they were little where we were at like Disney all the time. And then of course, Islands of Adventure and Universal as well, and going back and forth between the two. But it's been a while. Disney's crazy now. Crazy.
Yeah, it gets crazy. We were pass holders. We moved to Florida from Puerto Rico to San Agustin. So I'm up in San
Yeah,
Agustin. If you're ever in my neck of the woods, feel free to reach out.
I will.
So yeah, we moved in 2018. So we were pass holders for a couple of years and we love everything about Disney. But, recently my daughter, as I said, she already turned 10. She's got a
I think
different,
it's older. Yeah.
yeah, switching a little bit her interest. So
Yeah. So growing up, that was the theme, right? So we would, and I think that's interesting about our age. So I'm 39, and so I'm like firmly in millennial, right? But I'm the elder millennials. So like we're on the cusp, right? Of that like generation where I really did grow up without the internet. We grew up without cell phones, until I was in middle school, high school, and we didn't have social media. I think I got Facebook my freshman year at Florida State. So like that was the first time that we had social media. And so growing up in that environment it's almost like your foot is in two worlds, right? Because we had a half of our lives very dominated by technology, and then the early half of my life was very much dominated by like being outdoors, being with my friends, kind of being scrappy, like, having to do a lot of figuring things out on your own and learning on your own. I had the encyclopedia. Do you remember the whole encyclopedia?
of course I do. And people knocking on the door selling it.
Yeah, exactly. And so like if you wanted to like learn something, you had to go in the encyclopedia. Like there was no like this information on demand. So I think it's interesting, and it ties, I think, into insurance and technology, because I think there's a lot of people in my age bracket, let's say mid to late 30s, even to mid to late 40s, in that bracket that had some of that similar experience growing up. And a lot of us are in insurance now. And I think that coloring a lot of the move into InsurTech, because it's like we've lived in both worlds and we kind of know how to straddle the, older generation and the older way of doing things in insurance versus the, what's coming down the pike, and really being able to embrace technology the way it's coming down. But yeah, so that is how I grew up. I was a wild little bike gang child in Southern Florida. selling people back their own golf balls at 9.
Listen, that's amazing. Hey, it's not your problem that they threw it away or kick it away by any
Hey, and I
chance.
lived by the lake, so they would always get it in the lake, and you just take the thing, you drag it, and you get all the balls, and you go sell them.
Well, talk about starting a business from scratch and building around there. That's what it is. By the way,
Of
did you used to go to the greens, to the top of the greens, and then start rolling down?
course. Oh my God, that was we had one that was like a super hill, and
Yep.
especially if it rained, it was great because at the bottom it was like a slip and slide.
That's
Um,
amazing. So
yeah.
you went from starting in a young age, being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. By the way, I completely understand how basically what you guys are building, what you have done with your career, you have become a bridge between the older generation and the new generation. Um, my story is pretty similar in terms I'm 42, so I'm a little bit older than you. Even though I look a lot older, it's just life has been tough.
No,
Anyway.
you look young. Look at that the skin, no wrinkles. I'm
Yeah,
jealous.
exactly. No, no, no. Anyways, but yeah, it's one of the things that I've been blessed enough to bring that 80s, old school, 90s mentality to the new school, basically mentality of millennials and zillennials and all the whatever, and then be the bridge between that and generations in different industry organizations and stuff like that. So,
Don't we? I
uh,
think that's such an important role that we play because if you look like at the disconnect between the really young generation that's coming into the workforce now that we're all trying to entice to come into either insurance or insurance technology, and then you look at the older gen. I mean, that is a massive gap. Just a gap on how they grew up, society wise, what they grew up doing, their values, what they hold dear. Like it's just very, very different. And then you have us kind of in the middle,
yep.
just teetering back and forth at any given time, like my me time is important and I like boundaries, but at the same time, like I could never have built Iris without the work ethic that I got from my parents. Like like we're constantly teetering back and forth between those two things. So I think we have an important role to play.
Yep. And hopefully we'll go down in history as the strongest generation. Just kidding. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. I don't want to offend anyone. Anyways,
Feel vibes because good Lord.
I know.
We
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. It's times get tough and the insurance industry, which is interesting. You mentioned that. And I want to go a little bit back to your story. What we're living now with the hard market and everything going on, it's insane because like you said, we're going from old school, look at a black screen with green dots technology to in a sense or in a term of 5 years. So and I think COVID brought many horrible things, but one of the good things that COVID actually brought us was it advanced us probably 10 years because the insurance industry, as you know, it was way behind. So
Oh, it
it's,
kicked right in the butt. COVID came out of nowhere and it influenced the insurance, not just the tech side, but just the culture of
yep.
insurance in general. It was like immediate overnight. Oh my God, we have to change. And in insurance, that change
Oh,
is a dirty word. We don't do that here.
yeah.
Like
You're cursing on somebody when you say, no, we want to change this. It's like, oh, the whole world's going to come to an end. So,
yeah. So I agree with you. COVID was definitely one of those outside factors that I think when we look back in time will have had quite an impact
oh, yeah.
on insurance. Yeah.
And it brought us to where we are today and the world of InsurTech and going back to your career, how you grew up and you developed. Then you started working with independent agencies also at IOA and different one. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that, your interactions, and things like that that you
Yeah. No, I
experienced
mean,
throughout the years.
I've been in insurance for 17 years now. I sat in the seat of pretty much every seat in an independent agency. Again, here in Florida, it was a journey. So started really as a CSR. I spent most of my career as a in the commercial PNC space. So writing in Florida, writing commercial, and then not just like easy bop risk, right? But like construction, telecommunications, long haul trucking, really difficult risks to write, a lot of back and forth to manage. Even today, if you have listeners that are in that space, they know there's still not a lot of automation or technology at all surrounding that particular part of insurance, that mid to large commercial insurance market. And so just I cut my teeth on that, on just the most complicated, the most convoluted, the most, non-technical advanced. I was still doing things with, tricolor carbon copy paper and mailing things to people and filling out things by hand and wet signatures. And so I feel like I was lucky that that was how I started my career because I really got to experience what that was like. And then, with my husband built a large book of business in that construction and telecom field, ended up purchasing the agency we were at, and then but as then became owner, then shifted into, CSR into sales, and now I'm into ops and really into the owner's seat and the driver's seat. And I knew immediately that we wanted technology. I knew immediately, like, once I got my hands on this and I wanted to look through the operations, because frankly, that's where my skill set is. Like I said, as an entrepreneur, I had a company prior to getting into insurance when I was 19 that I sold when I was 21. I had an exit of that company. And so, like, I loved building and scaling companies, and I loved solving really difficult problems. So if you put all of that together, insurance, like especially commercial P&C in Florida, that was like the biggest puzzle in the world to try to figure out how to make that operationally effective. And so spent many years doing that, and really, and I said this the other day, and I mean it, and it's not a knock, but so much of on the insurance agency and brokerage side of our owners and operators are really salespeople at heart. So my story is not unique in that, you are a good salesperson, you get a big book, you eventually become your own boss. Like, that's the dream of a lot of independent agents. But in that process, the insurance has always been so stable economically, and it's always been such a great investment, as a career, that you can just keep selling, right? And everything is great, and not really have to focus on the operational side of actually running a business. And how do you go from being like a sales organization and grow into 5, 10, $15 million in revenue as an actual company? And we've talked about this before we got on about scaling a company and how hard it is to remove yourself and start, delegating these things that you've always done and to other people, and that's how you scale. And I think insurance agents and brokers in particular really, I don't know if they don't understand, like, I don't know if they haven't zoomed out far enough to understand, but they're like, when you get to a certain revenue cycle or you get to a certain place in your career and you want to either move past that,
Yep.
you got to make the decision. Are we going to stay small? Am I going to be this person? Am I going to do the work? Am I going to take my great paycheck? And is this where I want to stop my career? Or do I want to go and scale my company to be a larger brokerage or an agency? And I think that operational efficiency, the understanding of how to build a corporate strategy outside of sales, and, you really get into service and economics of margins and headcount and operational excellence and all of that, and analytics, and you start moving into tech, because that's really where tech plays a huge part in scaling. And so for me, that was like, oh, I loved everything about that, of solving that problem within my own agency, and then helping my agency go from what was a very small personal lines agency in Florida to a much larger commercial focused corporation that was doing its own merger and acquisitions, and we were doing our own organic growth. That 5 to 7 year journey
Mhm.
was so critical in how we ended up building Iris, because there are so many insurtechs out there that I see, they're missing that struggle. And that struggle is what, like, teaches you how to actually solve for the problems that the industry is actually looking for you to solve.
That was perfect. That was beyond perfect. And I couldn't agree with you more because at the same time, I think you explain it perfectly. There's a struggle we go through as agency owners. And as you know, I've been an agency owner for 20 years. And I always say the first 5 to 10 years of building an agency are so hard. They're so hard because there's so much to do, right? There's so many things that you have to put your hands in, and especially trying to hire and delegate, like you just mentioned, becomes so difficult. But then implementing technology, something as simple when you run an office, you don't, and then most agency owners won't even think about this. You eventually need an office manager. So it goes from you
Yeah.
as the producer, as a CSR account executive, and then you start building around that. But there are many things that you can integrate with technology. But unfortunately, unless you're one of the young, blooming, hardcore tech agency owners, like you and I know a lot of them,
Yeah.
most of them, they just don't get deep into technology because they think it's going to take away their time of selling. So
Yeah.
the question becomes, do I sell or do I build, right? Which is working in the business versus working
And
on the
that's outside.
business.
That's in general. And
That's
I
it.
think agencies, and I see it in the inflection point when you get when you start closing in on like 1 million in revenue, like, or maybe let's say like when you get above 500,000, you're into like that 750 to 1 million range in revenue. It's really where I've seen most agencies have that break where the owner gets to the point where they're most likely the biggest producer, right?
Yep.
But the agency is getting to the point where it's really too big for them to run the ops, the HR, the payroll. Do you know what I'm saying? All of the
It's a lot.
compliance.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and then when you get to that level of revenue too, now you have to talk about service staff and managerial staff. And that is, I've mentored a lot of agency owners that are coming up. And it goes back to like, what do you want like in your life? Because all the
Thank
ties back,
you. Oh my God.
right?
Keep going. Thank you. You're preaching here. Go.
Do you want to do? Because you can make a very, very good living making great money as a single, as an agency owner, sales, or a producer operator, right? And keep your agency relatively small and live your best life. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's something to be super proud of. You don't constantly have to go to the next level, right? But you need to know if that's what you want to do. And if you make the decision that, no, I really do want to grow this into a larger corporation and my passion is that, then you need to be honest with yourself about what your skill set is and what you need to supplement. So I got lucky because my husband's skill set was, very much on the producer side and mine was very much on ops. And so together as a team, we kind of had it covered. But had he not been there, had I not been there, I would have had to look at myself and say, I'm going to need to replace my sales. I need to look at producers that can go out and build like I did or better, hopefully better than I was able to sell. And then my husband would have had to do the same thing and let's say, hey, I'm a sales guy. I am not going to run ops. I'm not going to, this is
You
not
deal
my
with the
specialty.
operations. Yeah.
I need to hand this over. And I think it's a hard conversation to have with yourself. And because you do have to be honest with what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then you have to let go and relinquish when you decide, okay, I'm going to bring in that ops person or I'm going to relinquish and let someone sell. You have to let those people come in and be who they are. And they're not going to be you. And this is such a hard concept for a lot of agency owners when they go and they're on that inflection point and they're looking to scale in any direction. It's if you're in the forums with me and all that, which I know you are, you hear this a lot, like, how do I hire? Or this person's no good and I don't know how to train. And these are all of the things that you have to think about when you scale. And all of that self-reflection and all of that organization and strategy that I just talked about, that is the step zero before you can even start talking about what you need technology wise to get to the goal, because you have to define the goal first.
That
Right?
is true.
Like,
That is true.
if your goal is to stay small and stay local, then I'm going to tell you the tech you need to do that is very different than if you tell me I want to triple in size and I want to go do a bunch of merger and I'm going to do a bunch of acquisitions. I'm going to tell you that there's two very different tech stacks that you're going to need to complete those two things. And so agency owners, a lot of times we're so used to there only being one or two or three options,
Yep.
to actually grab from the tech stack that's tried and true, that we just think, oh, we'll grab it and it will magically do whatever my strategy is. And I'll just apply the software to my strategy. And it's actually the opposite way. You need to have the strategy first, then you look for the tool to supplement it. And that was a lot of that whole thought process, and everything we learned through that process was a lot about went into what we built in Iris and more importantly, what we didn't build. Because there's a lot of things that we chose not to build in Iris and they were on purpose. It was very, very thought out as to where we were going to stop our offerings and where we were going to start them. And again, all that stems from those years of doing that self-reflection on what we actually wanted to do with the company.
And I'll tell you something. I think you explain it perfectly. I mean, gosh, so good about every agency owner or every independent agent. It doesn't matter. Understanding who they are, what they want, but also understanding there's no right or wrong. You can either be small, you can either be big, or you can even. And I'll tell you my story right now. You can even change halfway through your career.
100%.
10
Please
years
share.
ago, yes, 10 years ago, I wanted to be one of the top 5 largest agencies in Puerto Rico with locations in multiple states. That was 10 years ago, right? Then my daughter was born. Then we got destroyed and lost everything with the hurricane. And then we expanded to Florida. And then we opened a small agency, boutique style. And what I wanted for me 10 years ago and what I wanted for me 5 years ago and what I want for me now, it's completely different. So I went from, I wanted a team of, 100 people, and I was ready to lead that and take over the world. And then we had a beautiful team, at the agency. But at the end of the day, when we started downsizing and I ended up selling my Puerto Rico agency, then stayed only with the Florida agency, which I also work with my wife. So I want to get back to that with
Yeah.
you.
Oh, there's a lot of husband-wife duos in
Oh
insurance.
yeah, oh yeah, yep, yep. She was previously an attorney in Puerto Rico, and then when the agency started growing, we had to go out and we brought in some new team members. So we brought producers, we brought CSRs, account executive, and then we went to the conversation of the operational management, right? The operations of the agency, which just like you, she was really good at that. And it doesn't mean I was bad. I was actually good, but I was better closing business than managing operation. I love building stuff. I love creating. I used to love writing insurance programs with buyback agreements and carving
Yeah, all
coverages.
yeah, yep.
It was beautiful. I mean, I enjoyed that. And we just kept growing and growing. We wrote hospitals, condos. We were on a roll. But then my daughter was born. And then I was home 4 days a week, I would say, of the work week. Probably I was home at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So now it's that, the question comes to you and I, our generation, the work-life balance.
Yeah.
And then we were very small when we opened in Florida because we started from scratch. So then we try to expand to South Carolina, North Carolina. Then the hard market hit, then COVID hit, then everything came around. And I said, okay, I'm either going to keep fighting and working, 10, 20 hours a day, or is it time to just settle down, take a deep breath, and then just move on? So it's,
Really?
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, just get back to life. And it's okay. And I tell people there's no right or wrong. It's what you want. Right. And you just, I mean,
What
thank
makes you
you.
happy?
What makes you
Yeah, and
happy? Yeah.
it's important to note that that changes, and I'll always draw this back to the technology side of insurance is the same way that you check in that you should be, checking in with yourself to make sure that you're constantly doing and doing activities that are putting you on the path that you want to be on, whether that's changing or not. You should be doing the same thing with any technology, any operational efficient, like any strategy really that you have within the business. I don't know what it is about agents that they have this like one and done attitude when it comes to a lot of this stuff. Well, I made a business plan or I implemented a software, and you're like, these things are forever. As a business owner, this is something that you're doing consistently and
Constantly.
constantly
Yep. Yep.
checking against strategy, making sure things that are rolling right, doing updates, checking in with your staff. Like these things are not one and done. And we tend to treat them as one and done ideas. Like you said, I was going to do this thing and that's it. And that's what I'm doing. And you're not taking into account market fluctuations or economy or pandemic that
I
happened
know.
to right? Like your children, your spouse, all of these things have an effect on your company, especially if you're an owner or even in a C-suite or a manager position. And like if you're not constantly going back and checking on those things and assessing like, is this still relevant? Do I still need this process? Like, are we still working towards this goal? And that goes with staff too. Like, is this staff? I have done this so many, like this person that is so great and so fantastic, but the agency took a turn and we don't really write this business anymore. Is this person the right person in my agency? Even though I love them and they're great people, but are they the right skill set? And that's a constant, that's what operations is. It's not, checking the box and doing the thing and then forgetting about operations is a daily check in with the health of all of those things that we just described, including the technology. And agents and brokers, for some reason, they think I'm going to put the tech in. I'm going to start the automation. I'm going to build it and it's
Right.
done. I'm done. And you're like, man, that is a recipe for disaster if that's how you think that that's going to go down. That's constant maintenance and
Yeah.
upkeep.
And I tell
Um,
everyone you got to check, especially if you manage automation, which I love. You got to check that monthly. You got to measure. You got to have some type of return on investment. And
yeah,
I tell agencies all the time, and especially agency owners, don't just get a tech for getting a tech. Get a tech, use it, and I mean use as much as you can from it. And I believe maybe somebody like a Chris Paradiso or Robert Klinger or those guys, they probably use 99.9% of their tech. The
right. They're
rest
not.
of that I call the rest of us, who are the mortals ones, we don't know tech so much. And as much as I love and I know a lot about tech, still, you only use maybe 60 to 70% of the tech you're actually purchasing because you're not investing the time to develop yourself within that program. So
Yeah.
it's like you mentioned perfectly, you have to invest the time as agency owners or even as agent. And I tell some friends of mine who are seasoned veteran agency owners, and I mean these are $5, $8 million revenue agencies, and they're like, I don't want to put so much time and effort on that tech. And I'm like, you have the money. You don't need to do it. Have somebody do it. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that. Have somebody else do it. Assign a key person or a point person. Run
When
those
you get that
KPIs.
size revenue, I would even venture, like I said, maybe to that 2 million size in revenue. You
Yeah, it's
should be thinking about somebody on your staff that runs software, IT, security, on like it a little bit feeds into HR too, right? Like making sure that, you have close like system access control, that you don't have people, stealing your book or pulling out your data. Like, you got agencies of size, you got more than 10 people in there. It's like, that's the time that you need to start thinking about your software being a part of your ops, and that you need somebody to manage that, maybe not full time, but certainly somebody who's got a significant amount of time in their day spent to making sure that that's healthy, it's running. And a lot of it's training, God, training your staff and keeping the updates that come through and making sure they know how to use the platform, not just one person. So yeah, there's I would suggest to any agency owner out there listening, like when you start to reach that inflection point, that is not a role that you want to sleep on.
and be humble enough to
Yeah.
share the knowledge and also be open to being criticized, right? And not in a bad way. It's just constructive, right? And I use
Feedback.
constructive, thank you, feedback, positive feedback, negative feedback. It's all good. It's how you get yourself and you make yourself better. I remember even during my hiring process, telling my account executive or CSRs, and I'll be like, listen, this is how we do it. These are our processes. These are our systems. This is what I want you to do. But then we will let them be them, just like you mentioned earlier as we start the conversation.
Yeah.
Now, if you find a way to do this that we have been doing for years, faster, better, more efficient, I don't care where I am, you're going to call me and you're going to tell me I figure out a better way of doing this. I will change the whole processes.
Right.
Because if you find that way that we have been testing for years, if you find it, let me know. I'm open to changing everything.
That's a culture thing, and that's another thing that I've seen shifting recently, and I think will continue to change within agency and brokerages everywhere, is this more collaborative, open communication between staff and manager. And I literally just had this discussion yesterday. And I can't remember who it was with, but it was with Chris Klein. I did a
Okay.
webinar with Agents Council Technology for the Big I. And I was talking through this process of like the culture of the agency itself lending itself to being open to change. That's not saying that, you're going to need to run out and buy whatever tech is, coming up, but a CSR or an agent or somebody in your care that's underneath you, that's working for you, should feel comfortable coming to you with this exactly what you're describing. Like, hey, maybe it's not software, maybe it is, or it's a process. Hey, I found a faster way to do this process. How do you feel about it? Or I found a piece of technology that I've been kind of using on the side. I'm thinking maybe we should implement it agency wide. How do you feel about it? Like that, those kinds of things, that is not common. It's not as common as it should be, but it's something that I feel like is growing in the culture of agencies as we start to bring in a younger group of people into insurance.
Mhm.
That collaboration is going to be critical for agency owners to do. And the other part of that is, if you find those people in your agency that are paying enough attention, that are invested enough in your business, that they care enough to come and tell you about a process that they found, buddy, you need to start looking at that person through new eyes, right? Because all of us know there are, clock watchers and
Yep.
checkers that they come in and they do their job. They're great people. They do their job. That's what they're there. They're workers, but they're not going to go above and beyond. They're not going to come to you with suggestions. And the world needs both of those people. But I think agency owners tend to be like, I've been, I know how to do this. I've been doing it for so long that when they encounter people that come in the agency that have those kinds of suggestions, that is a really great sign of a future leader in your establishment.
I agree.
And that's what they should be like nurtured, right? Like you can't slap that. Listen, and look, not all the ideas are good ideas, okay? Sometimes they're not good ideas, but you don't want to, kind of like your kids, you don't want to slap that down so much that they don't want to come to you anymore with those ideas and those suggestions.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to discourage them, right? And like you say, you got to be open, more receptive to those. And to me, what you just said, those team members that go the extra mile, it just means they care. They
They
care about
care.
maybe
Really
about
hard
you.
people to care. Like you
Yes.
can pay people a lot of money and they still won't
And they
care.
still
Like,
won't care. I agree 100%.
yeah.
With these members, they do care. They care about the agency. Maybe they don't care about the agency, but they care about you as a person as well, or as a
Yep.
leader. And that can
Yep.
make the whole difference. So
100%. Yeah, you wanna find those guys and usually, in my experience, the ones that will start talking about procedure and process and how to do something better and how to, improve a flow, those are good candidates for you to maybe promote into that tech space because they're usually the ones searching for the tool or the operational efficiency that will lend itself to them being really good at scouting out and or implementing and or helping adopt any new technology that you're gonna bring in.
I agree. I agree 100%. So let's go into Iris. Tell me all
Okay.
about it. What's going on? You guys are building the future. Congratulations, by the way.
We are building the future. It is bright. It is long and hard to build an AMS. So I think it's critical that we talk through the background because those years I spent doing operations and building and breaking, I like to say all of the tech that is and was on the market back then was the catalyst for me to build Iris because we were an agency and our goal was to scale. Our goal was to move. We went from personal focus to commercial focused, then into, how do we grow at scale? How do we become 5, 10, 15 million in revenue? And so like if that's your plan, that's what our plan was. And when we looked at the technology that was available, sort of let's call it out of the box, that you would typically reach for as an agency that was going through that process. It was, in my opinion, I've said it many times, far subpar technology to what I was seeing outside of insurance. Like, when we're running in your personal life with banking and your iPhone and being able to do, all of the conveniences that I was seeing and were helping my life outside of insurance. None of that was available in the technology that was presented as sort of best in class. And I spent millions of dollars and many years buying that technology, trying to build automation on top of it, ripping it out, replacing it. I bought every gadget, every doodad. I had the 75 things that were Zapiered together. I mean, we did it all. We went through that process for many years. And there were some key factors for me that no matter how much band-aided, layered technology I was going to add on top of all of this house of cards built on sand situation that was AMS, there were three big things that we could not overcome in the tech stack. The first one was no matter what AMS or CRM really, which is really weird, I chose Salesforce, HubSpot, Applied, 360. We've had them all. I could not get a very crystal clear vision of my client. Now, I could look at a policy and I could see an account, maybe, right? But I'm talking about the person that was purchasing the policy for me. And when I moved from personal lines into commercial, the relationships and the referral sources and the things that we were invoking to grow were all centered around a human relationship that I was forging, or my agents were forging, or my husband was forging. And none of that data lived anywhere in a CRM or an AMS. And so when I say what kind of data are you talking about? I'm talking about relationship data. This person was married to this person. They have these children. They work for this company. This company. Actually, we have another person who works for the same company. Like these, at the very most I got out of AMS was here's a policy, here's an account, here's a contact. And that contact had a field for phone number one, phone number two, email one, an alternate email, address, physical address, mailing address. And that was the end of anything that I could put in about this person that I've spent all this time and energy like knowing about into any sort of data platform for me to then reference later. Not even me for me to reference, but for my staff.
Hmm.
Because right now, if you look at the way these systems are built, everything is tied to premium, meaning the value of the account is tied to how much premium we have in the system for them. And the person that's the contact of that account, those SLAs, those service level agreements, the how you treat them when they call in, a lot of that is dictated by how much premium do we have on the books for them. And if you take that one layer, even one layer deep, you know that that falls apart. And I like to tell the story a lot about I had a $2,000 personal auto policy for this guy. I had him for 5 years on the books and had a home policy for him too, but very small revenue to me as an agent, right? In Florida. This is like
Especially
10%
in
commission.
Florida.
Um, he had he had a car accident or something. We had an issue with his vehicle and got to talking to him on the phone and realized that he was the CEO of one of the largest construction companies in Florida. Now, mind you, I had an entire construction department in my agency that we wrote and specialized in construction, millions and millions of dollars of construction. And here he was being on an SLA for personal lines that nobody in commercial knew about because of a very simple, there was nowhere other than the notes field and an AMS somewhere to write that this guy might be the CEO of a construction company. There is so much of that in agencies today. It's prolific in agencies that are small. I've seen it in agencies with $100 million of revenue.
Yep. Yep.
They do not have the basic understanding other than contact to account to policy as to who the people are and their center of influence as to how they affect and could potentially affect their book of business for new business, but also for cross sell, upsell, and rounding out a book of business by understanding who you're speaking to and their potential for revenue for your business outside of just that very narrow view you have. So we went back in Iris and said, no, this is not an account centric. It's not account centric. It's human centric. And every human is unique in Iris, which means that if you look at Margo, Giles, and Iris, there's not Margo Giles, the driver, and Margo Giles, the account holder, and the billing contact, and the additional interest, right? And that's duplicated in every one of these systems. That Margo would be there multiple times. Margo is one person and she plays many roles. She has many personas, which is how it is in real life. So I'm in my own AMS and Iris as a CEO for Iris. I'm in, and that's a persona I have, and that persona has email addresses and phone numbers and specific data that's specific to that relationship, right? I'm also in there as the chairwoman of the APIW in Tampa, and I have an APIW email address, and I have different characteristics and different things that are important to me to know about that relationship. And I'm also a driver on, Giles policy, even, you know what I'm saying? And
I
so when you
love it.
click in Iris, you will see all of the things that I connect to, whether they're policy or account or just personal. You'll see my husband, you'll see, our relationships and our businesses, whether you've got policies for them or not. And so for me, that was the hardest part to solve because that technology to do that is actually a mix of database technology, which we're all used to having, which is I put the data in and then I run the report. But it's also a mix of Ancestry, DNA, Meta, LinkedIn, 23andMe, where you're talking about people having these very diverse, interconnected social constructs around them outside of just what they have purchased historically from you. And that tech to build was, and is, a lot of it is still being built in Iris, was not something that was cheap. It wasn't something that was easy. It required every string, every connection I had ever made in tech to pull to be able to say, how are we going to build this? It took many years and a lot of research to do it. So that is like, for me, that's the core number one thing that we solved. The second biggest thing we solved was and this will hit all of the agency owners right in the feels, because this really pissed me off when I figured this out, was the ownership of data. when I figured out after all the millions and time and money and effort that I had spent in putting my data, which is my whole life force, it's my whole business, into a platform that then I realized I had signed over all rights to and no longer owned, and that these companies were out making money off of my business. And then if I wanted my data back, then I had to pay for it anytime I wanted to see it. And that there was no clear path for me to have unfettered, transparent access to my company data. I got pissed, like real mad. And that was probably the biggest spur outside not being able to see my clients as to why I decided to build Iris, because none of if there you guys want to go pull out your EULAs and your MSAs on your tech stacks right now, and I can guarantee you're going to read some clauses in there about who owns your data the minute you type anything into one of those fields. And that was something to me that felt, for lack
Because
of
it's
a
my
better
data. You build that data yourself
term,
with your
my
relationship.
my relationship, right? And we were so protective as agents and brokers about that data when it comes to carriers. Oh, let me tell y'all are not putting that client's email address in that carrier portal so they can go and steal that account from you.
Yeah.
It's purposive, okay? I'm gonna get in trouble for that one, but that's the truth, and we're very protective of the data when it's ours, when it comes to sharing it with carriers or other agencies, and then you go and you put that into a system that is like very blatantly telling you with no qualms that the minute you put it in here, you don't own it anymore.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah,
and we're
that's
all
not cool.
that, and to me, that was just bananas. And so the other thing we fixed there was building Iris in a way that was API first, meaning like, it's not a black box. It's meant to have data pushed in and out of it. We don't blackball your data. We don't put it in a case for you. We don't charge you for transactions. I personally think it's good stewardship and technology of any kind to have data backups outside of your main core system. You should be pulling data out of those systems and backing them up
Constantly.
at your locations constantly. That's not available to you. Oh, but it is, but you got to buy it.
Yep.
And it's another version of the same thing that you just bought. So you're really not ever free from that scenario. And so we built a lot of user friendly, like how to interact with Iris as pushing and pulling data as a concept and a construct of the entire AMS. And the third one, because I know this is long, but the third really big glaring point for me was the UX UI design, the way the workflows are built.
Okay.
I could not sit a new agent in front of any of those platforms and train them to how to go from something very simple, from like entering a new business all the way to creating quotes and then binding a policy, without 100-page manual and like a 12-month ramp cycle. Like, I was a small agency. I don't have 12 months to invest in training somebody on bad technology that then they end up quitting 3 months in because they don't want to do the job. And now I've lost that. I don't have that kind of overhead and
Yep.
that kind of time to waste. And my tech should not be the thing stopping me from growing my agency. It should be the thing that's helping me grow. And when we were using those platforms, I mean, you could just see people's eyes just die. The light in their eyes just die
Well,
when you
you're
set them in front
explaining
of,
them the process. This is what you're gonna do, and they're like,
and
"Oh,
they're like, what? So for us, we put so much time and energy and an Iris into, if you sat down an Iris and you clicked the button that said policy, would you get the policy? If you click the button that says, opportunities and submissions, can I see those things right away? And then the other part of it was, how do we build workflows, right? So the a step through of how you, because all insurance is process workflow. It starts here, you do 5 things, you end here. It's all process based. And even sales. It's, how do we create these workflows that are broad enough in scope that most agencies can use them out of the box, where you're not having to do like millions of dollars in customization like you would with like a Salesforce, for instance. Like, how do we get it so it's, the UI is understandable, it's clean, it's clear. They click a button, a new person can work through a workflow and get to the end of it. And yeah, they might have questions, but they're not completely lost. And that was really what that third piece that we focused on. So there's that differentiation. And how do we allow customers to customize or configure those workflows by creating their own checklist, or you know what I'm saying? Creating some automation and some email blasts and things like that, but without giving them so much leeway to customize that the agency themselves doesn't know where to start. Because that is also a really big problem with these systems. It feels like it's one way or the other. They're either very rigid and you can't customize them at all, or they're fully customizable. And then you as an agency now have to figure out all of the things yourself, and there's not a direction. And so we were trying to find that middle spot with the UX and UI design.
That is awesome. By the way, I
Yeah.
love everything you're building. And especially you got me at the first step when you started building the program, the relationship tech.
Oh, yeah.
That's all. When I see Iris, you're building a relationship technology agency management system. That's in simple words, right? It's more than that, but in simple words. And you mentioned the example of the CEO of the construction company. I remember one of my book retention specialists saying, "This lady is driving me crazy, and this is just a $850 auto policy, right?" They're looking
Yeah.
at the AMS, they're looking at the CRM, they're looking at the policy, they're looking at the premium, and she just keeps calling for the same thing over and over. And it's like, and of course, she was super professional, very kind, and many things. But there was one thing she did not knew at that time. She was the president of the HOA of our
Yeah.
largest condo account, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
She was the president of that HOA, and there was nowhere for them to see that.
Yeah.
So it impresses me when you said a relationship, right? How do you establish? Because you can move on from one person to the other. Let's just say Margo is not there today to service your policy or help you with a question, but Ariel is. I
At least I
opened
can
the,
see the context now. I have the
I
context of
opened the system and it says that guy is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. I'm a Jaguar. Let's talk a little bit about Florida rivalry in football, you know?
all of that. Like all of that is data that, by the way, again, when you go outside of insurance and you look at the technology that's being built, you want to know why Facebook and your iPhone can target your ads and exactly what you're buying, because they're doing this in every other industry right now. They're capturing buyer data and they're using that data to deliver poignant, targeted ads or products to consumers, and consumers are expecting that kind of service. And then they get to insurance and we can't even tell them, "I'm sorry, if you got a commercial policy and a personal policy, I can't see that in my system." I mean, come on, that's basic. That's basic things. And we are, as agents, it riles me up a bit because we're just sitting here, we're accepting this. Like, we're saying, I'm going to continue to pay for this software that doesn't do anything that I need it to do. Not only that, but I'm going to defend it because I've had it for 30 years. And you're not asking or demanding or requiring any advancement in
Movement.
technology
Yep.
or improvement. And you are getting outpaced at this point with other industries. Like, if you guys knew how many people were contacting us in the sales cycle at Iris from other industries that are trying to get into insurance to
Insurance.
take their financial services or their banking, because they have those types of abilities to be able to sell insurance policies to people and know that relationship and have that very, very communicative, very personalized relationship, and they can automate a lot of that. And they're looking at insurance going, "These guys are, this is Stone Age.
Yeah.
I'm going to come in, I'll put a couple $1,000,000 in, like I'll build a digital agency and it's working."
It is. It is working
It's working.
100%.
It's like, I don't think people are upset enough about this problem. They don't understand, and it doesn't have to be scary. You know, it is a big problem to solve, but I'm not the only one out there solving problems like this for customers and pushing for advancement in transparency in our software stacks that we buy today as brokers and agents.
And at the end of the day, it comes down to the consumer and the customer experience. And that's all we want. We want them happy. We want them
Yeah.
to stay with us forever. And especially from the independent side of it, we want them to stay with independent agents because we give back to our communities. We do so many things. We don't want them going to a captive and saying no, because now the captive built the platform and I feel more comfortable with this. And they just, we don't want any of that. So we need companies like yours and many others to keep developing. So kudos to you. Kudos to
Thank
you
you.
and your team. You guys are building something special. So be very
Yeah.
proud of yourself. Be very proud
Thank
of
you.
yourself. I can even imagine how much work you got now. So, anyways, so listen, Margo, before we go, I want to be very respectful of your time. Tell us something fun about yourself. Anything. It can be your love
God, I'm
to.
so boring. Really, that's all I do. Um, I'll tell you my little secret. I read a lot. I read a lot of books, like a lot. It's weird.
Okay.
But
I listen to a lot. I don't read a lot, but I listen to
I
a
do
lot of
a lot of I
audiobooks.
can't listen because I'll fall asleep. So I have to
Okay.
actually read it. But I read my favorite thing to do is read like romance novels. It's like
Hey, there you go. Whatever works.
I like to those like if you have listeners who are women, they'll probably know like the ACOTAR, like all of those book series. There's actually some up there in my background. That is my escape from reality. So you will always find me reading some romance novel, some crazy epic romance novel, if I'm not on a podcast or at my desk.
And I'll tell you probably why. First of all, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I believe it's probably because it just takes your mind away from all the stress at work.
Yeah.
And when you, it's my wife was an attorney, and when I spoke with her friends and they were all attorneys and they had trials, for them to get ready, they would love watching movies like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or
Longer, yeah. Yep. These epic sort of
yep,
journeys.
like
Oh,
rom-coms or stuff like that. And the reason being is it will take their mind away or it will shut it down for a little
well,
bit before.
you need that rest. Like
Yes.
when you work real hard, like actually the best ideas and the best work I get done usually comes after that, right after that like significant brain rest period, right? Then you're
Yep.
like you're energized and ready to go. So yes, I read romance novels. I
Ah,
start.
good for you. Good for you. My greatest ideas and inventions usually come after a couple of drinks, but it's all good. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, Margo, people who want to contact you, who want to
Yeah.
reach you, should they just reach out to you over LinkedIn? Is that the best
Yeah,
way to
link
contact you?
it's and then iriscloud.com, IRYS cloud.com is another good way to get in touch with us. Or if you want to see the demo or if you want to see kind of what we talk about when we map relationships, it's a good place to start.
Perfect. That's awesome. Well, Margo, thank you so much for your time. I wish you nothing but great things.
Awesome.
You and your team, your company, I know you guys are building for the future, and I look forward to seeing you in a conference very, very soon.
Well, I'll be there.
Oh, yes. Have a good one.